The Fishing Gurus Podcast.
Have you noticed anything different about the studio, Kristian? Can you see it's like a spot the difference compared to normal?
No.
Nothing at all?
No, maybe I've not been observant enough, but
Well, I
what's
have.
changed?
It's Toby's responsibility to set this up, and obviously Guru, orange, on brand. They only employed me because I've got orange hair.
It's just occurred to me what you're on about.
Yeah.
Oh,
These
no.
cables are normally orange. You've not changed them, have you?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
It's been
Big
slacking,
letdown.
hasn't he, Toby?
I'm going to
Yes.
blame that on you.
Yeah.
We haven't done one in so long, so I'm going to shift that blame back to you.
Yeah, sorry we haven't done one, folks, by the way. This summer has been absolutely mental. However, we have pulled in absolute celebrity for the first one back, Kristian Jones, current FishOMania champion. Great to have you on the show, mate.
Yeah, great to be on, mate. Feels a bit surreal to be here because obviously watch all the podcasts.
Do you watch them all?
Like I say, I'm not very observant about stuff, but I do watch them or listen to them when I'm driving about and love anything like that.
What do you think to the brews that get made on the podcast so far?
Yeah, okay. Could have done with a sugar in.
Have
but
you not put sugar in, Tobe?
You got it out for me this morning, haven't you?
Slack as out,
I
innit?
know, I know.
Slack as-
Giving
What?
him some stick today.
What's your favourite podcast so far, having listened to them all? Which one do you like the most?
Quite like the one with Will Raising. I like listening about the international side of things because it's the sort of fishing that I don't really do. I actually quite like listening to that because obviously doing the same sort of thing, the commercial fishing all the time, it's nice to hear about a different sort of aspect of the fishing.
Have you fished with Will much before,
Yeah,
Kristian?
I fished. He fished with us in the teams of four at Tunnel Barn a couple of years back. So I got to
right.
fish alongside of, and it's amazing the level of detail he puts into the fishing. Like I think I put a bit of detail down to it, but the way he records everything, even down to like when we were on the Winter League, temperatures of the lakes and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah, taking it really serious, but you can see why he's the angler that he is. Really
Almost
good.
obsessive with it, innit?
Oh
like?
yeah, just unbelievable, but definitely makes a massive difference for him. He's like frighteningly good.
I've had a lot of good feedback, or we have, Tobe, about Will's podcast, haven't we? Like the level he
He was
spoke
brilliant.
about his angling in. But you remind me of him with the level of detail you go to. I remember you. I mean, you're only 23 years of age now.
Yeah, 23. Yeah.
I remember coming to Western and fishing with you probably 8 years ago, and you asked so many questions then, and you still do it now. I mean, we fished together on weekend, and
Sunday.
we were chatting about the fishing.
I was trying to get some information out of you, and we've just been saying this. It was very hard to get information out of, I
I'd
think.
tell you anything.
That wasn't
And-
the case with the elastics, though, was it? Is that what you told me?
He told me he was fishing black hydro elastic for silvers, skimmers, and I didn't believe him. I did try that, bumped a few off, and then had to scale down. So
I
I
had a
don't...
single 5 slipping, I did.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Unbelievable.
Great to have you on the show, though, mate. Absolute honour. And I've got to admit, from a personal point of view, when I heard and saw you'd won Fish Out, I was absolutely buzzing. Tom Scoley let me know straight away. And first thing I thought was, I thought, brilliant, Kristian's won. Next thing I thought was, I'd love to see what his mum and dad are like right now, because I've spoke to your mum and dad a few times.
from
Lovely
Western
people.
and stuff like that. Yeah.
What were the response? What were their response when you won that?
I think because it was such a surprise as well, I think it was a brilliant sort of response from him. I think I could hear him cheering and going, "Go on!" when it was, and you can see there how proud
That's a
they look of me.
Yeah, look at
Look at
mum with
that.
chin off and
It's
everything.
a proper grin, that.
and like
Brilliant.
you know as well from when I first started fishing, like the places my dad's took me here, there, and everywhere. He's not a fisherman himself, but he's been to more fisheries than anyone with me, travelling about here, there, and everywhere, and put a lot of miles in.
Yeah.
Very grateful for that, and looking back, and it's just nice to have had that moment with them.
Yeah.
And it rewards me dad for the bit of time that he put in.
Quite
as
a lot
well
of
with
time.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, so supportive. It's
Yeah.
lovely. Like I said, dead genuine. I was like, Kristian's won. Weren't surprised because I know how awesome you are at fishing. I was really pleased for you. But the first thing that came in my head is I'd love to see what his mum and dad are
mum and
doing
dad,
right
yeah.
now. Bless them. Yeah. Oh, wicked. That was back in July now,
Yeah.
Fishermania, quite a while ago. And normally when we get a guest on after they've won something big, they've not really had a chance for it to sink in. But you've had a couple of months now. How is it now, 2-3 months later? Has it sunk in?
Yeah, well, the way I always am with me fishing, I'm a bit like, once one match is finished, it's like on to the next one and focusing on the next one. So straight after Fishermania, I had the Lindome Festival in 2 days. So I didn't really think about it too much, but now obviously I've had a few months to think about it. It has sort of settled down now, and I've thought about it, and I'm just grateful that I had an opportunity to win it when I was so young. Gives me a good sort of platform now to kick on with me fishing and stuff like that.
Oh, definitely. Well, you must have been one of the youngest to win it, weren't you?
Yeah, I think Pete Black was the youngest.
Right.
I think he was 21. But yeah, I think I'd have been one of the youngest to win it, and it's obviously great for someone like me to get a chance to win it so early, I think.
Definitely.
Matt, I've just thrown that picture up there because I think it's brilliant. Kristian, you told me, is that the moment that you found out?
Yeah, because what sort of happened is we sort of thought that I'd probably be second or third in the match, and I think everyone was a bit caught off guard when the weighing happened, and it was like no one really knew who won, so they were trying to add it up and double check it. So
it was so close.
Yeah, that's what it was, and everyone, like, no one knew who'd won even after we'd weighed. So I was like, have I won? And like, I think it was Jamie from Angling Trust.
Yeah, Jamie Cook.
Yeah, and said, no, you've done it.
Wow.
And obviously, first thing, Kieran come over. He couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And you can tell with my face.
That's Kieran, your bank runner, Kieran Marsden.
Kieran Marsden, yeah, my bank runner. And you can just tell by my face. It took me by complete shock.
That's a great photo.
That's a brilliant picture. Yeah.
Anyone that's listening and not watching it, definitely tune in and have a little look at the photo. But he's just got a beaming smile, and he's obviously trying to say something. It's probably a swear word, to be fair. But he looks so happy and surprised at the same time. It's a cracking photo, that is. Absolutely brilliant.
I'm probably saying to Kieran something like, can you believe that? Can you believe it? We were both so shocked. We were like, it was unbelievable. But yeah, like I say, looking back at it now, it's just such a great moment for me and Kieran just to have had that as well. Because we travel about here and there everywhere, and we're always talking to each other like, oh, how good would it be to get to jump in? How good would it be if one of us did win it? And it's just good that it did happen. So
superb. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about Kieran and obviously you two and your fishing a little bit later on. But while we're talking about Fishermania, obviously 50,000 quid prize money. What did that do for you? Mean for you? How are you using that pot of money, which is an extraordinary amount of money to have as a 23-year-old? What are you going to do with that? Have you spent it? Are you going to use it wisely, or have you just been on a wildie in Marbella?
Yeah, so obviously when I think about winning Fishermania, I don't really think about the money. It's always never been the motivation for me with fishing. First and foremost, love me fishing, obviously like that. But with me being a full-time angler, that bit of money, obviously I knew would be massive to help me push that on. Just gives me a bit of money to have as the money behind me, so I'm not as worried through the winter when things slow down and stuff like that. Got myself a new fishing van.
Nice.
That's something that I wanted. I always drove about in a few random vehicles. I had a Fiat Panda, you remember that?
That was the greatest. That's what you came to Western in the
Ultimate
time, innit?
fishing vehicle.
Did you get all your kit in there as well?
Only just,
I was going to say, that must have been tight there.
I've gone from my dad taking me in his van and being able to get loads of kit in to having to sell me pole rollers because they didn't fit in and get some smaller ones and stuff like that. So it's a bit nice to have I've got a decent van now that I can get me kit in, and just with me traveling about all over the place, get something nice and reliable. But other than that, I just wanted to be sensible with the money. Obviously, I just don't want to blow it all because it's a lot of money for me, because it's more money than I've ever had before. And I don't want to just rush into buying stuff or anything like that.
It's a perfect little buffer at your age to have now, though, doing what you're doing. And you say full-time angler, obviously you do a little bit of coaching as well to tick over.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, mainly that's what I do all through the summer months, from sort of March time up to about October-ish. I'm coaching pretty much 3 days a week, and that's good. Obviously, through the winter, that slows up with fishing going difficult, and I don't feel like it's obviously value for money to take people out when it's difficult, cold. They're not catching a lot, can't really teach them a lot about feeding and stuff like that. So it does slow down in the winter, so it's nice to have that little bit of money there, just so I don't have to worry so much through the winter about where money's coming from and stuff like that. It's good.
Brilliant, really useful.
Kristian, sorry, can I ask you a question on your coaching?
Yeah.
With you obviously being such a successful angler at 23, so very young age. Are you coaching people that are usually older than yourself?
Yeah,
or?
Pretty much everyone would be older than me. Any age range really, up to probably up into like 60s or 70s.
Wow.
Even like you find that some people, just varying levels of angling, like even just pleasure anglers that just want to get a little bit better at fishing or want to start matches, and even up to like people who I fish against all the time in open matches, who just maybe even just like one tactic, like they might say, you know, you've been doing really well down the edge, can you just teach me about down the edge? And then, you know, varying levels of anglers. And
amazing. So they'll actually come to you for the, you know, for the advice and that.
Yeah.
Do you ever have any kind of sorry, Max, I was just curious on this when he spoke about it.
I've got a few more I want to ask him as well, so fire away. Because
we spoke about coaching quite a lot on this show before. Have you ever had any difficulty with regards to your age? And you're obviously trying to show people sometimes, well, as you said, double if not triple your own age, you know, how to do it. Have you ever faced any difficulty there?
No, to be fair, pretty much everyone's just dead easy to talk to. Everyone's just really interested. They want to learn. They want to, you know, they have a nice chat. I think whenever it's about fishing as well, you've always got like something common to speak to with people. It's dead easy. You normally just get straight into it, chatting, having a brew, have something to eat in the morning, find out what they want to learn.
It's always a nice day out fishing, isn't it? Like whatever you're doing, sort of thing. Have you ever had a real interesting character, like anyone with any sort of strange background or just out of interest?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that.
Fishing brings together so many different kinds of people.
I don't know. No, I'm trying to think who I might have coached. I've coached loads of different anglers. Like I say, I'm trying to think who might be the most interesting person I've ever coached.
Never had anyone like Rita Ora ask you for a day's coaching?
No, unfortunately, like no female celebrities. No, nothing like that. No, nothing that I can think of comes to mind, Matt. But just like I say, just even like we've even had people who've like won big matches approach me and stuff as well, but no real.
Here's one for you. Have you ever took anyone coaching? Obviously, you get to coach a lot of different people, some good anglers, and then gone and fished against them, and they've beat you doing what you showed them. Has that ever happened?
I suppose it must have done down the line, because obviously I'm coaching at Partridge a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I remember I actually once coached a bloke called Mike, and I coached him on Lake 2 at Partridge. And I actually drew next to him on Lake 2 at Partridge like a few months later. And I remember I was fishing shallow and he was fishing shallow, and probably for the first 3 hours he was beating me, and you think to yourself, I regret telling him so much now. He's going to have me today. But it's nice to see people that you coach do well. I love that when you obviously get a message through, or you see a result and the person you've coached has won or won the section, or it's nice. That's probably, you know, the best part about doing the coaching is seeing a difference. And I want to see a difference in the anglers that I take out coaching. I really take pride in making sure they do learn plenty from each
Superb. Day. You should be really proud of that yourself, mate. Really proud of it. Back to FishOMania. Now, this year was a little bit different because it was at a brand new venue, Westwood Lakes, near Boston, Lincolnshire, I think it is. What did you think to that final being at that venue? When you qualified, were you happy that it had changed place? It was taking place at Westwood?
Yeah, Hayfield is a venue I absolutely love. Like, I love that style of fishing because I don't do that sort of thing a lot. I'm mostly fishing Snake Lakes. I like the change and the challenge of going to bigger venues, fishing rod and line, stuff like that. But obviously, Westwood Lakes is a venue that suits the style of fishing that I'm doing all the time. Very similar to Partridge, Snake Lake type fishery. Loads of fish. A venue that I've fished quite a few times as well in the past. So I was happy. Secretly, it was like, I hope I get a chance to fish that final this year, because I felt like it suited me better than maybe Hayfield would in the past.
And the match itself, obviously F1 fishing, it ended up being one of the most exciting finals, super close. Yeah. How did you prepare for the match? Did you go and practice at Westwood much? I know you have fished there in the past, but like, you've qualified for this FishOMania final, which you ended up winning. I want to know what happened before it. What was the lead up for you as an angler?
Well, like I say, I know the venue pretty well. Go on most of the festivals, sort of go twice a year and fish the festivals, so I know the venue pretty well. Falcon Lake in particular is a lake that I've done well on in the past. Suits my style of fishing. Like I say, Snake Lake, F1s, shallow fishing. So I didn't feel the need to go and overly practice. I just wanted to go and rule out a few little things. So whenever I've been in the past, it's been a lot of edge fishing, ground bait and maggots, soft pellets, and then maggot shallow. So nice, simple fishing, 2 lines normally. But I was hearing a lot about people catching on worms, people catching on casters, and more than anything, I just wanted to go and try and rule that out. Because I think that's the biggest thing with practicing. I think you don't want to massively go and try and practice the things what you do know. It's more like rule a few things out, make sure you know in your head, don't need to do that, so you know what you need to do, and you can go confidently to the venue. So I only actually went and practiced once, fished 1 match on there, and it was actually my fishing association knockout against Wayne Kearney, so there's a bit of added pressure on. So I wanted to go and try and practice, but I also wanted to try and catch a few so that I could get through on that. I actually got knocked out on the day. I had about 80 odd pound. I think Wayne Kearney had 90 odd pound and knocked me out. But I learned a heck of a lot that day, and I think that helped me massively going into the final.
What did you learn? I want to know what you learned that day now.
When I was on my peg in the morning, I actually had my mate Andy come and sit behind me, and he said, it's tight, isn't it? It was really peg tight, and I was thinking to myself, it's probably a good reflection of what the final's going to be like, bit more pressure on the lake. I presumed that fishing across, fishing away from the pressure, getting across is going to get me some bites.
Yeah, fishing further
out. And that's what I had in my head for FishO. I thought, you probably won't catch close crowds behind you and stuff like that. And what I actually found out was I went across, and everyone who started in the edge had a brilliant head start on me. I might have had 2 or 3 fish, and the anglers either side might have had 6, 7, 8 fish. And it told me straight away, now you have to start down the edge. And that was one big lesson straight away. And then the next one was like, what we found is whenever you're fishing across on there, you get loads and loads of fish in your peg. They're in your peg all day. Every time you feed, they're on your bait.
Well, you can see them with like the
you
tails
can see
out.
Them, tails out. You think you should just be emptying it. But the problem what you have when you're fishing for F1s like that is, when you're fishing with your little cad pots, you want to set your bait and you want to get it down to the bottom, get your rig on it nice and quick, so you've got your bait set before the fish come in your peg. But what seems to happen across on that lake is you feed your bait, and as it's going through, the fish are on it, disperse it everywhere, and you end up with, like your trap gone, and you're like, come all the way back.
So they've spread your bait out everywhere.
And it's time to come back and feed instantly, because second your trap's spread out, the chance of you actually getting a bite in that spot's very unlikely, because they'll just eat around and be here, there, and everywhere, and you've got nowhere to get the fish to come to. So that was a problem fishing across, and I think a lot of people twigged onto that. Right. Even though it looks great and you've got fish in your peg all day, then very difficult to catch and very difficult to get a run of fish. So I then knew going into the week after, no good fishing far. You have to catch close, where you can control your peg a little bit better. So that was probably the biggest lesson that I learned, because if I hadn't have gone that day, I almost definitely would have spent most of my match across and got it wrong.
So you dare say if you hadn't have gone practicing that one time, you probably wouldn't have won?
No, 100% I know I wouldn't have won.
Really
because I would have approached my peg in a completely different way.
So based on that, the next thing I want to ask is, how did you fish the match? Like, I'm sure everyone listening, and I certainly from a fishing point of view, I want to know, how did you win FishOMania at Westwood this year? What tactics? Talk me through your match, start to finish.
So the night before, we actually went to have a look at my peg.
Right, because you didn't draw, we'd done early.
The draw early, and the night before, everyone went pick up the wet gear and stuff like that, where everyone had a little wander around and had a look at the peg. And I've actually drew in that area before in a festival. I think I drew peg 10, permanent peg 10, and actually on the day of the final I was on permanent peg 9. And I remember saying to Kieran, I remember catching in the right hand edge when I was on peg 10, and it plumbs up really well down that edge. I said to Kieran, like, I know it does. It's like 15 or 16 inches, what I said to him. He's like, surely it won't be right. You're right what you're saying, like, surely it will be different depth. But it was like 15 or 16 inch, and I said to him, I fancy to catch down there. It's on a bit of a bend. And when we had a look, there's actually put like a bale of hay in it. Well, he said it was barley, Alan, when I spoke to him at Westwood. It actually like a floating bale of barley in your peg. And I said to Kieran, joking about, wonder if they'll just sit under that and I'll just empty it. Do you know what I mean? Like joking about. And it just looked nice. It looked like the wind was sort of blowing into that peg, and I did fancy it. And I just felt like when I was stood on my peg, that down the edge was going to be the main method. It's quite a wide peg, so that ruled out the across line even more, even though I didn't want to fish it anyway. Got there, and because it was on a bend, it was probably 16 metres wide.
Got you.
So I said to myself that they sort of made my decision easy to try and stay away from that across line. And then it was just going to be have a short line to hopefully catch shallow, but if not, it was just going to be to try and rest my edge line whenever I needed to.
Right.
I did feel like the edge was going to be, from what I learned the week before, was going to be like the key line.
And how did the start of the match go for you? Like, were you happy with how because getting off to a good start with all that pressure, the crowds, the cameras, big final that you're building up to, that start of the match is such a important moment.
Yeah. Well, what seems to happen on Falcon at Westwood is when you go in at the start, you get an initial rush of fish where they come in your peg very quickly and they're quite easy to catch for so long, and then it seems to fade. And I expected with us weighing in every half an hour at FishO that, you know, we could get that first initial run in the edge for half an hour, and then once the nets come out, I was thinking it probably would slow the fishing down a little bit. So I wanted to start in the edge, so I was going to start on pellets, soft pellets, and I just knew that by doing that, it gave me the best chance of getting off to a little good start, nice and clean bites, fishing soft pellets. And I think I had 7 or 8 fish in that first half an hour just fishing soft pellets, and it got me off to a nice start. I think might have been 3rd or 4th after the first weigh, and I think I had 7 or 8 kilo. And it just got me into the match, and I learnt that from the week before. I didn't do that the week before. I started across, and everyone else had that 7 or 8 fish, and I didn't. So, like I say, it was just something. I was glad that I had some fish in my net, and I started off good, but I was expecting when the nets come out, it was going to slow it down, and it did to an extent. Then for a little while, it took a while for the fish to start coming back in the edge.
Because am I right in saying that throughout the actual match, which they have half-hour updates, half-hour weigh-ins, there's a leaderboard in FishOMania, so you can see who's winning. You were never actually top of the leaderboard.
No, not until the final weigh-in. I think the highest up I was until the final weigh-in was 3rd.
Amazing.
All the way through.
So what did you do in that middle part of the match? After a steady start, settling your nerves, getting into it, what did you do in the middle part of the match to sort of keep yourself up there?
Yeah, well, like I say, after we weighed that first half an hour, it definitely did slow it down. I think second half an hour, I caught like 1 or 2 fish in the edge. And I'd been feeding me shallow line with maggots.
Down the middle?
Down the middle, sort of top 5, top 6, because on that lake, it does shallow up quite quick when you go across, so you stay quite close.
I've just thrown a shot. Is that the right lake up there?
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
So where were you in terms of that lake
on
then,
the
Chris?
sort of top left-hand corner.
Yeah.
Just on the bend, that's about it there, yeah.
Got you.
Just there. And yeah, so on that lake, from when you go from about halfway across, it shallows up really quick into sort of, and you only got probably about 18 inches of water.
Right.
And that's too shallow to catch off the bottom. You can't gather the amount of fish that you need to get them up and competing. So you fish it quite close, and then it gives you the option of obviously having a deck line over the top. And that was going to be, I was hoping it'd be a good line and I could go shallow and catch really well, and that could potentially be a winning line. But in practice, there wasn't loads and loads of shallow fish. Seems like they get very tricky to catch on there. There's a lot of fish in your peg shallow sometimes, but they're not always easiest to catch. So I just thought, feed that shallow line, and that can give me an option to drop on the deck if needs be, and just give me somewhere to rest my edge, because I expected my edge to be my best line, but I knew you wouldn't be able to just clatter them, because it seems on there that you get little waves where they'll be in your peg, and then you have to sort of come away from him and just let him gather back in, drop back in, especially with the pressure on the day. I thought that was really important.
That's interesting. It seems to me like already, though, even from standing on your peg the night before, knowing you were going to catch them in the edge late, for a big match and a lot of pressure, you had quite a clear plan and calm thinking about what you were going to do. Like listening to you, that definitely comes across.
Try to simplify it down as much as possible, because I think as well, when you need quite a few fish at them sort of venues, you can't do too many things. You can't be like across, short, edge, right edge, and be up here, there and everywhere. I just wanted to try and have a match where I had 2 lines or maybe 3 lines where I could rotate them and just have it, like a match where you don't have to be too busy and but somewhere where I've always got somewhere to go. And on the actual day, my short line never worked very well. I probably only had maybe 5 or 6 fish off it all day. But what was really important is even when when your edge died, even when you weren't catching on your short line, just sit on it for a little bit, let them fish gather back in the edge. And I think that was probably one of the key things on the day.
Almost like a rest is really effective, resting your swim.
Every time I went back in, I'd get 2 or 3 fish really quick down the edge, and then it'd just be like drop back on my short line, maybe nick a fish, but more than anything, it was just getting me away from that line, let them come back in, let them gather. And it seemed like that was really important until later on in the match where they seemed to come in properly and I could really catch consistent runs of fish in that edge.
Really interesting. What, listening to you again there, when you say big match, lots of pressure, you don't want too much going on, you don't want too many lines, rigs, top kits and that. Do you think, or is that something that you apply to these big finals? You've been in quite a few already at such a young age, and you see people on these finals with dozens of top kits, up to 10 rods set up, and look at it thinking, I always look and think, wow, I'd never know what to do with that lot. Like, is it something you think's important when you're fishing these big finals?
I think obviously, I think a lot of people set a lot of kit up on the finals from sort of like, feel like they need to set a lot of kit up. Like, I tend to find, and I do it with a lot of me fishing, that I'd rather set up what I feel like I need to use to win the match, and then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I feel like if you set too much up in the match, especially like in a big final where there's a lot of pressure, you tend to waste too many times trying things. Whereas if you, especially when you know the venue, go to your peg, say, this is my best chance of doing well, set that up and go and fish that way, you tend to have a smoother match. And not always is it going to work, but that's the way I tend to like to do it, is it keeps things simple and keeps me like confident in what I'm doing.
Right.
I find whenever there's, you know, like if I had a couple of across rigs there or other different rigs, it'd be the temptation when it's difficult to pick it up and go across and probably ruin your match. It's like, no, I'll just have a sit short. They're going to come back in the edge and drop back in the edge. That's the way I like to fish. Lovely and simple. I think a lot of people will take a lot from that little conversation there, definitely.
So the end of the match, this is when it got really exciting, because you're up there, you're there or thereabouts. Like, what were the conversation between you and your bank runner, Kieran, and what were going through your mind this 3/4 way through this match? I'm there, I'm thereabouts. Did you know you got a chance? Did you think you could win?
Yeah, so speaking to Kieran, we kept saying, like, the edge is good. Like, every time we went in the edge, you would catch him. Everything that we felt like was coming into our peg, we were catching them. They weren't, you know, sometimes one of the biggest problems when you're doing that sort of fishing is fishing your peg but not being able to hook them. Too much bait there, and we felt like we were happy with the way that was going. We just kept saying to each other, we just need a run in that edge and we can get higher up in the match. We felt like winning it was probably unlikely, to be honest. We felt like, but looking at the weights, we felt like second or a section win was very possible. So just trying to stay positive.
And you get a good amount of money for a section win.
Yeah, I think it was like $2,000 for winning your section, $10,000 for second in the match. So we were sort of thinking about that, really.
Not to be sniffed at, that though, is it,
No,
Toe?
definitely not.
And we just kept saying, just keep doing what we're doing. We're doing all right. And if we do get a better run of fish in the edge, then we might have a chance of second or a section.
I just
win
love how like laid back you are through the whole thing, because you're obviously still doing very well, but you just did you not get nervous at any point? Did you not think, well, what about first? Like,
no, to be fair, I think because the fishing that I'm doing on Westwood is very similar to the fishing I do day in, day out with me coaching and everything like that.
Yeah.
All that side of it is very routine. I try and blank the crowd out as best as I can.
Is that easy though?
I think when I first fished the first FishOMania I ever fished in 2019, I was a bit nervy to begin with until I started catching fish. But I think that was me fourth final that I'd fished now.
Right,
and
okay.
I've learned now that I can just go there. In the morning you have a little bit of nerves with the crowd, but as soon as you've dropped in and you start fishing, it just starts to become like a normal fishing match.
But the cameras on FishOMania, like I'm sure you've watched bits of Fisho, haven't
Yeah, I
you,
have,
Tob?
yeah.
They're so in your face compared to like a match this or a golden rod or any of the other finals. I always think Fisho is the most intense and where nerves are most likely to kick in. Do they affect the fishing or anything when they're right on top of you?
I think so. Like on the day, I actually was fishing towards where the platform was with the camera, and there was a woman who was every now and again coming on the platform with the camera, and actually when she walked on, you could see the shadow go over me float. So
No.
obviously I felt like that was maybe affecting the fish. But I was kind of lucky in a way. Later on in the match, they tend to focus more on Arthur, who was catching well most of the day. And obviously it was sort of left alone. So that last 2 hours, I didn't have the camera woman walking onto the platform very often. So I think that definitely does play a part. You know what it's like with all sorts of style of fishing, skylining and stuff like that. People walking about can affect the fish. And I think especially when you're fishing down the edge, fishing so close, I think that's obviously, but that's Fishermania, isn't it? I think you're always going to get an element of that in any match, and it's going to play a part in every final you're going to ever fish. As soon as you start catching, the cameramen will be on you.
You almost need to base how you fish around it a little bit, don't you?
I was just hoping that because I had that sort of barley, that bale there, that might have sheltered it a little bit, and I think maybe it did on the day.
Right.
It's hard to know would I caught the same if that wasn't there or if it was.
I want to know how you fished in this edge then. Obviously, that was the line that turned it around for you late on, or pushed you ahead, should I say, in that final half an hour even. Like, how did you fish tactically? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so just pretty me standard F1 setup that I use most venues that I go to. So, like I say, it was like 16 inches deep, which is like what I'd class as like mud line depth, muddy depth. So, little short, muddy float, positive rig, heavy rig, so that when the fish are coming into your peg, you can just set a little trap, fish come in, hopefully eat your hook bait and most of the bait what you fed all in one go, and you have a nice clean peg. So that was the way I wanted to start. So like I said, starting with soft pellets, micros, expander, nice standard simple F1 fishing, and you tend to find that to begin with you get a good response feeding micros. The fish come in, you can catch them, and then later on in the day I tend to, and this is the same most of the venues I go to, you just introduce a little bit more ground bait, a bit smaller particle, get more fish back in your peg. So as soon as it goes difficult, I go to then a mixture of micros and ground bait. Sometimes just ground bait on its own. But
what ground bait do you use? Can I dare ask?
Yeah, Blake's pole mix.
Yeah.
I use that for 99% of my fishing. It's just one of them where you have confidence in what you use. Just such a good ground bait for that sort of fishing because it's got quite a lot of crushed expander content in, and what it means is when you add a lot of water to it, it doesn't clag together very easily. So when you're fishing in the edge, I think it's very important to have quite an over wet ground bait. I think there's actually a clip on Fishermania, you can see me actually over wetting my ground bait even more, and what that does, tightens up that feed sort of area as best as possible. So you're feeding it in almost a little bit of a, not like a ball, but instead of it going in dry and spreading out, it clumps together. So you've got a very tight little area, nice little trap. And that's just nice standard F1 sort of fishing, what we do a lot when we go to places like Partridge, Tunnel Barn. And then just later on, swap from fishing pellets on the hook to when I started to feed a bit more ground bait, fishing maggots on the hook. And just seemed like as soon as I started changing to ground bait, some fish come in my peg, it got better, it got faster, and it just built up through the day. And like you say, last 2 hours it come on really strong for me, and
still didn't lead the match until the very final weigh-in. At what point did you think, or did you not think, I can win this? Like, I could creep ahead of you. Like you've talked about, might win my section, might get 10 grand for coming second. Was there ever a point, even in them closing stages, where you were like, my name's on that 50 jibs here?
It's quite funny really. So me and Kieran were talking like all day really about where we felt we was, and like we could see Arthur catching, and going into that last 2 hours, I think I had a decent second to last hour, got myself up from, I think I might have been 10th to about 5th, something like that, going into the last hour, and I had a good sort of penultimate half hour where I got
that's
up
a good
to
word,
third.
isn't it? Penultimate.
Do you like that one?
Fishing Gurus podcast word of the day goes to Kristian Jones with penultimate. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think I got up to third in the match going into the last hour, and then during that last half an hour where I was catching really well, Kieran's going to me, I think you'll be second here. I think you're going to be second. And I'm like, you know, it sounded good because, I wasn't high up. It wasn't like I'm thinking, oh no, I'm going to be second and not first. It was more like second's a good result, 10 grand. And I was catching, and then with like 5 minutes to go, I just said to Kieran, has Arthur caught much this half hour? He said, you know what, I don't think he has. I only think he's got 2 or 3 fish. And I'm like, well, what weight do you think I've got now? He said, well, how many fish have you got? And I think he said, I bet you've got like 6 or 7 kilo. He said, I reckon if you get 2 more now, you might have a chance.
No.
That was the first time I thought that.
Yeah, I felt that.
Yeah, I'd have been like, better concentrate now.
The first time that I thought I might.
Butterfly is going there.
And I actually did catch 2 more. And I think I had one with like 30 seconds to go, and you didn't actually see it on the Fishermania footage. I did catch a fish with 30 seconds to go, but
What was it?
Like a little carp, like a 2-pound carp. And it actually come in really easily. Kieran said to me, it's funny as well. He said, make sure if you up one now, you pull it, get it in. You don't want to run out of time because the fish have to be landed before the end of time. It's
so
not
if
like
you've got a fish on and the whistle goes, it doesn't count?
It doesn't count.
Wow.
So he was like, make sure if you up one now, you pull it in. And I upped one in the edge. Like I say, I thought there was probably only about 30 seconds left at the time. So I literally upped it, come in, pulled it, skimmed it across the top, netted it really quick, put it in my net, and then Kieran's gone. Probably got enough time to drop back in again. I was like, Key, I said I could have lost that by pulling that too hard. He went, no, don't worry. It's, you've got it in, get back in. And I did actually get a chance to drop back in again. And as I've actually got back in, Arthur's landed a fish. And I remember Kieran saying, Arthur's just had one now. So
what were you feeling like at this point? Dying stages, 50 grand on the line.
I'll be honest, I wasn't too nervous because I didn't think I had enough.
Right.
I know what Kieran sort of said to me, thought I had a chance, but deep down I thought, no, I'm going to be sure. It was a lot to catch up. I think I needed 6 kilo more than Arthur in the last weigh-in.
You're giving me anxiety when you tell the story. I'm like, oh my God.
No, I was pretty chilled out, and at the end of the match, it was sort of like, the all-out went, got off my box, sort of looked to my mum and dad and went, well, sort of like, second's all right if I can come second, sort of thing. Never thought about winning. Truthfully, I never felt like I had a chance.
Did anyone who were watching in say, we think we've won, you've just nicked it, you might have done it?
No, not once I'd just finished. And I think I weighed in first out the 3 of us who were in contention. And he come over and the guy from Sky said, the race for second, you've got, good chance between me and Andy Dyson for second is what they were saying. They thought Arthur had won it. So I pulled my fish out, or Kieran pulled my fish out, chucked it on. I had a wander around to see what I got. I thought I'd probably got about 8 kilo again, which I'd had the last weigh in. And it actually went a little bit more, 10 kilo, 350 or something like that. And I remember the reporter's like, 10 kilo. He was like surprised. And I think a lot of the Sky was surprised that I'd caught what I'd caught because they hadn't focused on me a lot that last half an hour. They focused mainly on Arthur. So I think they'd missed that I'd caught as well as I had. And obviously then I thought maybe I might have had a chance, half a chance. I think then they went round to Andy Dyson. I didn't know what he'd weighed. It's a bit too far. He was round on peg 1, sort of on the inside of the lake. Didn't know what he'd had. And then the only thing what gave me an inkling that I might have won it then was when Arthur actually weighed in. So they gone round to Arthur, they pulled his fish out, and he needed about just short of 4 kilo. And I think he weighed about 3 kilo, 250. And I could hear like gasps from across the lake as if like, I knew he hadn't won it then. I knew he was short. Everyone was like, oh, like, and I'm thinking.
Yeah, because he'd have cheered if he'd have won, surely.
Yeah, he'd have cheered, he'd have been in the lake, and it was like, well, he hasn't won it. Who's won it? And then they were like, I think someone in the crowd behind said something to me dad, like, I think he's won it. They were sort of maybe watching it on the phone or something. It sounds like he might have won it. And I could hear him like, no.
Imagine how your dad were feeling at this point.
And then they come round and said, Alex Dawson, who was helping run my section and weigh in and stuff, said, I think you've definitely beat Arthur. Just Andy Dyson. And I was waiting and I kept saying, what's he had? I just wanted to know. I couldn't believe it, what was happening. And it was like, what's he had? And then Jamie from Angling Trust said, you've got enough, you've won it. And then It was just a crazy moment. Kieran come over, I could hear me mum and dad, me nan, my uncle, all screaming, made up. Key gave me a big hug and it was like, right, that's it, let's jump in. We were off. And we were a bit like, we didn't know whether we should jump in because anyone who doesn't know Westwood Lake's like quite a shallow lake.
Yeah.
Very silty bottom. It was like, wonder if we jump in and we'll break our legs landing. It was that shallow. But we just literally in the moment, bang, straight jumped in.
And was it official at this point? Like someone had come and gone, you have won.
Well, Jamie Cook said that to me, and then obviously they got the Sky cameras come on and just sort of... It was actually the woman who was stood on the pallet had the camera on our face, and she was like smiling at us, like nodding, not saying jump in, but like it's like time to jump in.
Yeah.
And we were like in. And me and Kieran said to each other later on, it was funny when we were in the hotel. We were like, "Do you know when we jumped in? Did we definitely know that you'd won?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, I thought I had. They said I had. It would have been funny if we'd have jumped, it popped up and we're like, "What you done?"
Can you imagine if you hadn't
Oh, you'd
won
be
and you-
mortified, wouldn't you?
God.
Should we? I've got the moment up there. Should we have a little? look?
While that's on though, Tobe, look at the
Well, that's
top
just ridiculous,
3.
isn't it?
So third place, Art Ilme, 56 kilo 150. Second place, Andy Dyson, 56 kilo 340. First place, Kristian Jones, 56 kilo 750. Literally 600 gram. Not even that. Yeah, 600 grams separating the top
It
3.
really doesn't get much
Just
closer
over
than
a
that.
pound. Bearing in mind,
That's
we've just been
ridiculous.
talking about
Yeah.
you netting a 2-pound carp with 30 seconds to go.
Yeah.
How exciting is that for a Fish Show final?
It doesn't. I remember watching it and I couldn't believe how close it was. It was ridiculous.
No.
Imagine if you'd have lost that fish.
I know, like I said, I pulled it very quick, and that's just...
But you
the
wouldn't
luck you
at the
get in
time. You
fishing.
wouldn't have thought much of it because you said you didn't think you were up there anyway. And then imagine if you'd found out you were that close.
Yeah, it was more like I need to get it in, because if I go in and get another one, then I might have a chance.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or if I don't catch this, then it might cost me second.
By the same token, though, are Andy Dyson and Art Ilme looking at it thinking, that bite I missed, that one that I bumped, the
I
one...
just couldn't handle
Like-
that. Like
It's so close.
Yeah, and I think from obviously I've fished the match, but I think from just looking at the weights now, it does show that it was a good choice to move to Westwood Lakes for the final, because I think them sort of weights that close, and you see even down to 13th, you've got good weights. People are catching fish. Does make for a good final when the weights are that tight.
Look at that 13th place, nearly 35 kilo.
Yeah.
What a venue. I've
Brilliant.
been there myself on features and filming.
Yeah.
It's an awesome place.
Brilliant
Met the
venue.
owner, I can't remember his name.
Alan,
Lovely bloke.
lovely bloke.
Great, nice bloke. Yeah.
Great bloke. Love going there, to be fair. It's just a fantastic venue. And
It is.
let's have a look at the.
Come on then, Tobe.
Shall
Click play.
Ultimately, art-breaking afternoon for Art. Unbelievable. But, I mean, what a competitor. What a man. Andy Power in full place.
Some
Had
cracking
8
names there in
2.5
that,
hours,
isn't there?
and then he
Yeah.
kind of finally
He's
lost it in the last
proper
hour.
strong
But a true
standard of
champion,
angler, and a lot of
deserving
anglers
winner,
who do
making a big splash
a lot of
this
that F1
afternoon
style of
at
fishing as
Westwood
well.
Lakes.
There he is.
Here we go.
Tom Daly.
I tell you what, me diving
you
isn't
gave that
very
a
good.
right.
Whoa.
Joe.
Hey. He's
Kieran
gone for
goes
it
for
there.
He actually, what was funny about Kieran jumping in, he just bought a new pair of trainers,
Oh, do you
and he
really?
had them on.
Ruined.
He had them on, and he went straight in. And
Ruined.
when we got back to the hotel as well, it was first thing he was on the phone to his girlfriend. Sorry, I've wrecked them new pair of trainers. What you bought me?
What did you say? Christian's going to buy me some more?
Yeah, Christian's gonna get us some new ones. Don't worry.
That is awesome. What a feeling that must be when you get to jump in knowing you've won something like that.
Crazy. Just watching it back now as well, it's like, I remember how surreal it was at the time, and it still feels a bit like that. It hasn't quite, like, it was just all a bit of a blur what happened.
I'm waiting
Yeah.
to see what trainers he ruined.
I think, a pair of Adidas.
Nearly lost his sunglasses by the
He
looks
lost
of
his
it.
hat as well. His hat went floating off and everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it warm, the water?
Do you know what? I didn't. I was not really even thinking about it. It was
Right.
like, and the only thing I can remember is how soft the bottom was, and like, this is something in fishing that I've learned because I've been doing a lot of fishing at venues with very silty bottoms at the minute. And when we actually got in, it was almost like, trying to explain, it's like soup, really, really soft, and like, it was hard for us to actually walk in through it as well. So something that's very interesting. It's
I love it how he's won 50 grand, jumped in,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all he's bothered about is, so you know what, the bottom's really soft. Like, next time I go fishing
It was
there,
just
maybe...
so
Yeah, I know what I'm going to do next time.
Yeah.
It was just so noticeable though, because like me and Kieran said, that was mad, isn't it? How that is under the, because you realise that it's soft when it's fizzing up like that, but you don't realise quite how soft it is what you're fishing over.
Yeah. How much of your fishing would you say now then, mate, is geared towards getting into these finals, like FishO, Match This, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, sort of from like March time through for like until maybe August, the big qualifiers are like mainly what I spend most of my focus on, except for a few festivals here and there. My main part of my focus is on the qualifiers, just purely because that's, I think, the sort of road, if you're going to do your commercial fishing, what you go down just naturally, because you know, it's like everyone wants to win these big events, wants to have a go at being on TV, on Sky Sports and stuff like that. So that's what we've always done. And another thing is, like, me and my mates who I go fishing with, Kieran and my mate Alan, we like travelling about, going different venues.
What's Alan's second name?
Falzon.
Al Falzon, Kieran Marsden. They're lovely lads, them two.
Yeah, great
really
lads.
Enjoy their company.
We have good laugh. We travel about. We try not to take it overly serious, so it's not like drive there, draw bad, not have a good day, you know, come home annoyed and stuff like that. Even if we have a bad day's fishing, we'll have something to eat on the way back. We'll have a chill out. We'll have a coffee. We'll have a chat. We'll try and make it an enjoyable day, because I think if you don't do that, you can get quite like down about the qualifiers, because you can easily fish 10 qualifiers on the bounce, do no good, don't win a penny, 10 bad pegs.
And does that happen to someone like yourself?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I don't know how many qualifiers I did this year. I think I applied for the Fishermania for about 14. I bought 14 tickets, and I think I've probably qualified on my 11th or my 12th qualifier.
Right.
And before that, I think I did have a second at Ehrenbrook, but other than that, majority of them, I'd say you'd not had a good result, or sometimes you don't even get a good day's fishing, and you could easily like lose interest in it and quickly say, oh, well, I'm just going to go and fish a few open matches and stuff. But I think the important thing is try and chill out about it, enjoy it, take it for what it is. If you have a bad day, shrug it off. Next one, might go and draw a flyer next week and empty it down the edge, win it, and you're in the final. That's how you've got to look at it, I think.
I like that.
To try and not let it bother you, because I think it does bother a lot of anglers. I see that, do you know what I mean? That people fish the qualifiers, and by the end of the campaign, especially if they haven't qualified, it's like they don't want to do it the next year. But I just try and like just think, you know, your day will come, keep going at it, try and enjoy it, try and learn a few bits. If you have a bad day's fishing, you know, go to a venue that you'd not been before. Well, I didn't catch a lot, but I've worked out that this was quite good, or, you know, you could catch a few skimmers doing this, or you know what I mean, stuff like that.
Got ya. But that's really interesting, because even people on the podcast have spoke before. I'm sure Mikey did, maybe even Pete Upperton, that it does get to people when you try and spending loads of money on travelling,
that's the
a
thing
lot of time, early mornings, late evenings. I mean, you're is it Ellesmere Port?
Ellesmere Port,
you're from, which is miles out the way, Chester way
near
on.
Chester, North Wales way.
That's a lot of travelling for you to go to some of these qualifiers, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm lucky, obviously, that I've got a couple of good lads who I go travelling with. You know, since I've got my new van, I'm having to drive a little bit more.
Have they made you
Not
drive?
too pleased about, but to be fair, they have drove me about for a good few years.
Brilliant.
I'm happy to try and repay the favour a little bit now.
They're getting the money's worth now. Then.
Yeah, definitely. Kieran's like loving it now. He's like, straight away, got my new van. 2 days later, I was taking him fishing. He's like loving that.
What's the usual stop off? You say food on the way home. What is the, out of your little threesome you've got on the go, what's the favoured one out of all three of you? Like, where do you like to go the most?
Where do we like to go? So we've been going to Bone Hill Mill the last few weeks, and every time when we're coming back, it'll be Nando's. What we normally do is end of the match, get weighed in just before we load the van, place an order, go collect it.
Oh, you place it before you get there.
Yeah. So
They've got that down to a T.
Yeah.
They're organised. These are organised.
We work out roughly what time we're going to be there. Get there, go in. You can pick it up, and it's quick. So obviously you're not like get there.
Have you ever got it wrong? Have you ever, like, I don't know, been stuck in traffic, so your Nando's has been stone cold when you got there?
The nice thing about Bone Hill Mill is like it's only like 5 minutes away from a Nando's, so we normally know when we're going to get there. But
right.
I think you probably could do that, couldn't you, if it was a little bit further away? But then you just have to try and time it as best as possible. I'm in charge of all that. I try and get the timing right.
You're the tech guy.
Yeah.
Right.
And just try, you know what I mean? Just try and enjoy other than just the fishing, try and make it an all-rounded day out so that you'd never get like that where you're not looking forward to going fishing. We're always like looking forward to the day. If we don't draw well, we'll have a Nando's, we'll have a chill out. We'll
Superb outlook on it, mate. That really, really good. I'm sure a lot of people listening will be like, I need to relax a little bit more. I know you're thinking it now, folks, listening in. You'll be like, oh, yeah, I should maybe relax a bit more, or get yourself a travelling partner or two, like you have. Good group of friends.
That's important. Having a travelling partner helps with, like, if you go to a venue as well, and say we go to a new fishery, and after the match we can say, like, I've been on one lake, my mate might be on the other, and it's like, after what worked on there, what worked on my lake, and then you learn faster because you learn about two lakes or two different areas of the lake on one day instead of just your peg on that day.
Yes.
So I think you tend to learn about the venues quite quick, having a travelling partner, having someone to bounce ideas off. I think it's important.
From a fishing point of view, and getting a little bit more serious again, you're travelling about, you're fishing these qualifiers from March to August or whenever.
Yeah.
What do you think the right mindset in terms of tactics is to try and qualify? If people are listening in here and thinking, I'm going to do some qualifiers next year, you've probably inspired some people to just doing this podcast, mate. Like, what advice would you give someone who's going to go and do some qualifiers for the first time?
I'd just say, like, one of the biggest things for me is, when you're going to apply for the tickets for a start off, try and pick the venues for a start that you go to maybe regularly, or places local, so you're not having to travel as far, because obviously it's expensive with the fuel and stuff like that. If you can, obviously if you live down south, there's not as many qualifiers. We're very fortunate where we are that there is a good few qualifiers within an hour. Try and pick some local venues that you know, and then just go to them with, like, I don't go to my peg with any different outlook on a qualifier than I do on a normal match, because I tend to find that a lot of anglers go to the peg and they say, like, I'm just going to be really positive, try and win the match. But I sort of fish like that anyway. You go to your peg trying to win the match, and I think if you go to your peg with an overly positive mindset, that's when you tend to don't catch anything, come home a bit gutted, you've not had anything, go back the next one, don't catch anything. Just go to your peg, fish it for what it's worth. Just fish your peg. When you're on enough fish, the peg will fish itself, and you'll have a good day and a chance of qualifying.
Interesting. You've got this relaxed aura about you and your fishing and chilled out. I really like it.
It's something I've learned over the years as well, because I think when I was younger, I was probably not so relaxed about it when I first started.
You can't be that much younger. They're only 23.
No, but when I very first started, I was a bit more, like, nervous about it, and it bothered me a little bit, and I've just learned that it's not worth doing that, because it tends to affect your matches for longer. If you have one bad match or a couple of bad matches and you think about it too much, then you'll have a bad match the next one because you're thinking about the last one instead of I try and just, when it's going well, I'll use the matches before to keep me going, and then when it's going bad, put it behind me, move on to the next one.
Well, Kristian, because you are so laid back, both in yourself and your fishing, is there a moment in your angling that you can recall where you perhaps did have a meltdown, or you just lost it, or you just weren't so cool? Like,
yeah, I tell you, the day that sprung to mind straight away is, don't know what year it was. It might have been 2017. I went to Portugal with the England junior team, and it was actually the first day I ever fished for England. Like, I'd went the year before, but I was the youngest angler, and
this with the under
18s it was at the time, and I didn't actually fish the year before. We actually won gold, had a really good week, but I didn't fish, so, like, I hadn't really been put in that position. And then obviously on the first day of the World Championships in Portugal, it was like the first time I ever fished. It was like 40 odd degrees. It gets really hot. You've been to the venue, haven't you? This year I think you've been to the
venue. We did, yeah. There's a gold medal just there from it.
Yeah, nice when you got that one in. And it's like red hot on the sand, and it's like quite a high pressure sort of environment, and, like, I struggled to deal with the heat. It ruined, like, all my clear thoughts were gone. Like
Really?
normally I'm pretty, but like it was a pain, and like my maggots were dying and everything on the first day before the match. Yeah, the match actually got postponed because they had to try and clean the pegs out. There's some weed had drifted down or something.
Got ya.
They actually put a rope at the end of the match length, and I think the weed drifted and stopped at the rope, so the first few end pegs were covered up. They couldn't fish. So the match got delayed, sat out in the sun for longer. You're thinking about it a bit more because you've got the time to think. And I just had a really I almost like just let the match pass me by without really thinking about me fishing. And that's probably the day what I've learned from the most about fishing is like, you've just got to try and calm yourself down. You can only do what you can do. You fish the best of your ability what you can on the day. And I think that's sort of one of the biggest learning things for me about trying to keep it calm, because obviously we had a bad day in general that day on the World Champs. I don't think it was just my own performance. We didn't have the tactics right on the first day, but that can really get to you, a match like that. And now, if I have a match like that, which happens every now and again, just got to try and shrug it off.
Great attitude. Really,
well
really
said.
good attitude. What's, in terms of matches and good matches, bad matches, you've qualified for quite a few big finals. Have you ever come close to winning one or had a chance of winning one other than FishOMania this year?
Yeah, well, I think before Fishermania this year, the closest I ever got was in the match this final in 2019.
Right.
I had a decent day, coming third, caught on a bomb, and looking back, I don't know. I think I had about £108, and I think Jamie Hughes won that day with £125.
Wow.
I don't know. Like, I felt like I fished a decent match. Felt like I caught well from the area that I was in. But then you look at the stamp of the fish in Island Lake at Hayfield, 2 fish, you probably won. So I probably could have won that day, but it wasn't one where it's not one of them where you come away from it and you say to yourself, I should have won there today. I've messed that up. I've fished a bad match. You know what I mean? But more recently, last month, the Maver match this final at Hayfield again.
Right.
On a different lake, Adams Lake. I actually drew a peg that I didn't think was so good in what's called Dead Man's Bay at Hayfield.
That's never a good place to draw, is it? Dead Man's Bay.
It sounds, you get, as soon as I'm in Dead Man's Bay, you feel like you're out of it straight away.
Yeah.
But I think the fish can be there. Do you know what I mean? You can catch some fish there. It isn't as bad. Like that, the Adams Lakes at Hayfield are solid. There's loads of fish, loads of skimmers, loads of carp.
Brilliant fishery.
Yeah, fantastic place. Love it on there. And I think like I went in with the wrong mindset on that one, whereas I went to me peg and I thought, well, I'm on a bad peg. I'm going to just try and get some bites, try and maybe do all right in the section, and I probably went a little bit on the negative, sort of beat myself that I felt like I wasn't going to win. And looking back, I probably could have caught enough to do well on that match.
Enough to win,
potentially.
Maybe?
What ended up happening is I decided I'm going to fish for skimmers. We had a chat in the morning, me, Andy and Paul. We were sharing a few ideas because we'd all qualified. We travelled down.
Andy Bennett and Paul Holland.
Andy Bennett and Paul Holland. And we were sharing a few ideas, talking about the fishing. And we actually all drew in a line in Dead Man's Bay on the day.
Right.
All 3 of us next to each other. And we were a bit like, that's a shame. Like, we felt like none of us were in with a chance. But we said to each other, like, just let's all try something a little bit different. Do you know what I mean? And I said, I'm going to fish for silverfish. Just wanted to try and get some bites. I knew there was plenty of silverfish in there. But I hadn't practiced for silverfish, so I didn't really know what the best way to catch them were. I spoke to Andy. Andy said I'd feed, ground bait, some micros. If you've got some worms, maybe. But I just basically put in what I had with me. And I caught some fish, did manage to win the section, fishing for silvers. Had a lovely day's fishing. But I come away from it thinking if I'd have got that right, that silverfish line, another £20 was probably achievable, and they were £2 fish. They weren't little small skimmers. They were them big old fish. And Paul next to me actually late on had a go fishing for silvers, and he had some casters with him, and I didn't have any on the day, and he loose fed very aggressively. And as soon as he started feeding aggressively with casters, my peg got worse and his peg just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And I know, looking back, if I'd have practiced it, worked that out, could have maybe caught some more. And that's probably the match where I feel like I probably could have won the match.
Amazing. On a tactic that no one else would have fished, I dare
and
say.
on a peg, what I'd have said was, if you'd have said to me, what peg don't you want? I'd have said my peg. And it shows you've got to be open-minded. Fishing's fishing. I probably could have won there. Maybe not. You don't know. But
couldn't put it better myself.
In
What
the
a
back
great
of my
way.
mind.
Yeah, great way to sum it up.
Yeah.
Worst peg, somewhere you didn't want, a tactic you wouldn't expect to win, and that's what you felt you had a chance of winning on.
And on the day, Sam Brown won from the smaller lake. I was on Big Adams. He was on the Little Adams. He had 90-odd pound fishing for carp. Like I say, whether he could have caught that, don't know. But that's fishing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't think, I was saying to you actually today, driving up here, like, I don't think you could ever have recreated that match. Like, if you went back now and fished for silvers, someone could catch 200 pound a carp like you can at Ayfield, and it's just one of them. On that day, it probably was the way to go, but
that you might not be in that situation for another 10 years.
Never be in that situation again. That's fishing.
Do you think, realistically, you could, with the way that drawing and the odds and chances in these big money finals is, what do you think the chances of winning more of them are in the next few years? Do you think that there's a real high chance that the same people can keep winning them, or do you think that really good anglers and people like yourself could easily go 5, 6, even 10 years and not get a chance?
100%. You need that bit of luck. Like, the standard of anglers so good that anyone who's in that final, like, they've all won a big qualifier with a lot of anglers. They can all win on the day. So you tend to find that the anglers that draw well on the day, can catch enough because they're all good quality anglers. So I know that, like I say, I've been lucky to have won one this early. Like, second attempt at FishO, I couldn't believe that I'd won it. Maybe won't win. Maybe you'll win the next one you fish. That's just the luck you get, and you just got to keep putting yourself in the position, I think, trying to qualify. If you get there, you've got a chance to win it. More times you get in the finals to qualify, to give yourself a chance, the more chance you've got of obviously winning another one.
Definitely.
So just keep plugging away, keep enjoying it, and fingers crossed. And if it doesn't happen, then I've won FishOMania, and more than I would have ever thought that I'd have won in my fishing career. So,
I'd bet all my savings you're going to win another one. All £1.20. On a serious note, though, for you guys and girls listening, if that's not inspiration to go and have a try, go and have a pop, you summed it up. If you don't go in the qualifiers, you're not giving yourself a chance. You're never going to win FishOMania. So if you're thinking about it, you're sat on your settee or you're driving along listening now, and you're not buying tickets and you're not entering qualifiers, you're definitely not going to be sat in here talking about winning it.
Even if you just do a couple of qualifiers at the venues that you fish regular, just go and give it a go.
The thing is, what have you got to lose?
Nothing.
That's it, isn't it?
You've
only got anything to gain from. You might get to the final, you might win it, but if you're not, you still got good days fishing, or in your case, you bad days fishing in a Nando's sometimes.
Exactly. And you'll learn loads. Even if you don't qualify, you're going to learn
you might
as well.
Draw next to Andy Bennett, Jamie Hughes, Andy Power,
Kristian Jones.
That's it.
Learn a bit off them, get to watch them, say, ask them how they've caught. And like, there's not many like sports or anything where you can go and enter an event and be surrounded by all the best. So just, I think anyone who's thinking about giving it a go, give it a go, enjoy it and take it for what it is. And
damn right.
Yeah.
Damn right. You fish a lot of venues, and it's definitely more of an up north kind of thing, this. And I really wanted to ask you about it, knowing that you were coming in for the podcast. There's some methods and styles of fishing, and you do a lot of them, and you coach people on it. You witness it in match situations that are frowned upon or have a dark cloud over them, or some people celebrate them and really embrace them. But 3 or 4 different methods that win matches, do well, but are very controversial. And the first one is the overshotted rig for F1 fishing shallow. What do you think to that style of fishing?
Well, when I first started fishing partridge lakes, so probably like 8 years ago, I went on there and I'd not seen it a lot. I'd seen it an odd time when I'd been to Steve Openshaw's place on the Wirral. A few lads, Lingmere Fisheries, a few lads fish that sort of way. Sometimes with no float, sometimes just overshotting your float, depending on the rules on the fisheries and stuff like that. And I didn't know a lot about it. And I started fishing, and it was like, whenever I used to go other venues, I used to do well fishing shallow. I could catch a few. When I went to Partridge, I just couldn't catch anything, and it's like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Like, I go to Western, go to Lingme, I can catch shallow. Go to Partridge, and you couldn't. And because the fish are so heavily pressured at a place like Partridge, they wise up to everything so fast. And fishing with a normal fixed float on there, I believe what the fish can do is come in, take your bait, suck it in, spit it out, your float hasn't moved.
Wow.
I'm adamant that they can. So I think the only way to catch them fish in that situation is to overshot your float so that you've got a tight line. When the fish take the bait, they hook themselves and they're on. Sounds simple, and I think that's where it gets the bad name from. I think sort of people say, put that on, you'll just empty it. It's easy. They pull the elastic out. Don't need to strike. But the anglers that catch on that method, you like see your Chris Weeders, Mitch Rawlinson. There's loads of them that fish at Partridge Lakes that are really good at it. They fish, they know the ins and outs of every depth that you have your rig, how much weight you need down the line, how long a hook length you need. You'd be amazed how people think you put a big heavy weight on, the fish take the bait, hook themselves against the weight, they're on. Doesn't work like that. The way it works is the fish take the bait, you've got a tight line, but because you've got that tight line, they just hook themselves against the pole tip. But if you have too much weight down the line, fish sinks too fast, fish don't take it. Too little weight, it's not tight enough. You've got to get that balance in. It's unbelievable. And when I'm coaching, I say to people like, right, we'll start on a rig that might have 4 number 10s on. That might be like a standard overshotted rig. Nice light float, 4 number 10s down the line. That'll work well. And then I'll say, right, it's windy. Can you see there's a little bit of a bow in the line? Just put 1 more number 10 on. They're like, 1 number 10? What difference will that make? And they'll come in, put a number 10 on, go in, catch.
Wow.
And obviously a number 8 or a BB shot would keep it tighter, but that too much weight, and then you flit your rig in and it sinks like a brick.
So what you're saying is there is so many little things within overshotting a float shallow for F1s.
And I think that's the same with any tactic. And, you will catch on a BB shot, an SSG shot, an odd fish, but to catch the winning weights, the match winning weights, what you're trying to catch, and to be better at it than other anglers, there's so many little tweaks to it. The way you move your rig, the depth, where your shot's placed, how far from the hook, all these little variables, even down to what float you use, and how far the float is from the connector, can all make a difference in how many fish you hook and how many you catch. So
brilliant.
I just think with all these methods and like the overshotted rig, if it's allowed and it's the way to catch the fish, you've got to be on him, because there's no point like saying, I don't like that thing, I'm not going to fish it, and then get beat. I always go with the methods that catch the fish, as long as it's not, endangering the fish or anything like that. I think it's fair game, and it's
a method.
It's a method that
undoubtedly
works.
It's a method.
It catches fish, and I enjoy it as much as any other method.
What about mugging fish? What's your take on mugging? That wins so many qualifiers at certain times of the year. Do you think that's a complex method? What's your experience in
I think
mugging?
What maybe puts people off about mugging is anglers standing up and stuff, when and being like on the box and stuff like that. I personally just think fishing, when it probably started in its sort of earliest days of fishing, you wouldn't have been feeding. You'd have been going to where you can see fish and casting at that fish. I would say, if anything, it's probably more of a standard way of fishing, as more than like, as match anglers, we want to feed the fish into our peg, but I think seeing the fish and aiming at the fish is quite a purest form of fishing as you could ever get. Again, it's a method that if there's 200 pound of carp on the surface in your peg, you try and catch them. It's the top and bottom of it. That's the way I look at it, and that's just the way I am with my fishing. Whatever method it takes to win, as long as it's within the rules and it's safe for the fish, I don't see the problem.
Like it. So obviously Fishermania win, qualified for loads of big finals, ridiculous amount of festival wins. I'm not going to go into all the stuff that you win day in, day out, because we'd be here forever. and I've got no doubt you'll be back on the podcast in the future, probably not too long. But to sum it up, what would you say your edges to success are, Kristian, as a young angler that is, in my opinion, competing at the highest level on the commercial match scene at the moment? What would you say the single most or few single things are that you apply to your fishing and do to make you what you are at the moment?
I think just preparation's a big part of it. So, like, I'm not someone who ties loads and loads of kit up. I have a fair amount, but I think it's very important to go to your peg or wherever you're going to go and make sure you're happy, you've got enough of your stuff, what you need. And then you can go to your peg confident, relaxed, and you've got what you need. I think that's very important. Bit of time off the bank, bit of research into the venues you're going. You know what? Like I say, we went to Makins on Sunday. I messaged you. I tried to get as much info as I could out of you to try and...
How did that go for you?
Not very well. I won't dwell on that too much.
He's horrible, isn't he?
Unbelievable. You'd have thought he'd have told me, but no.
I tell you everything.
No, so... just to try and as well, it's just like peace of mind. I think that's a big part of like your fishing. I see a lot of anglers go to the peg, and so it works for some anglers, and it's like they'll tie rigs up on the bank and stuff like that, and it's something I can't do. I need to know before I go to the venue that I know what bait I need. I've got all my rigs and stuff like that. I think that's a big part of it. And other than that, it's just like trying to focus on small details. I find that especially for F1 fishing, what I do, the tiniest little things, like I just spoke about with the overshotted rig, like an extra number 10 can make all the difference, one less number 10. Just trying to focus on tiny little things, I think is a big thing. So I don't like keep any records of anything, but anything that I learn or any little things, I try and make sure that I remember it for next time. So if I go to a fishery and something's blatantly obvious, like, I just try and make sure that I remember it. And if you don't remember these sort of things, I know Will writes everything down. I remember seeing that. Write it down. Make sure you know, because these tiny little things are normally the difference in match fishing. Because like I say, all the standards so good. It's never normally a big thing. It's normally the tiniest thing that's making a difference.
Couldn't agree more. People sit in a line nowadays fishing in a competition at the highest level. There's so many good anglers. You could be fishing shallower casters for F1s. Someone next to you is fishing shallower casters for F1s. And there's no way that they can see these small things that make a difference. You're loose feeding, they're loose feeding, same line, same hook, same float, same shot floats, pole.
All the videos and stuff, people know what floats you're using.
It's the extra number 10. Or it's the how many casters you're feeding.
How long a length of line above your float.
All them little things.
All them tiny little things, yeah. I think that's the key, just focusing on the smaller details. I think what helps me in my fishing. And
you can relate that to Fishermania, what you talked about in the margins earlier, wetting up your ground bait so it goes down in
tiniest bit of ground bait. A tiny bit more water in your ground bait sometimes. You know, you've got fish in your peg, you can't quite hook them. Just going to try, get another little bowl of ground bait, try a little bit of wetter, feed it, catch a fish, and then normally you know for next time. And I like with stuff, even just stuff like ground baits, I like to have like a bit of a recipe with stuff as well. So on my bait, I work out measures, so I know that if I want it a little bit wetter, I can add a little bit more, a little bit less, you know, so that I can be a bit consistent with my fishing as well.
Like it.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant insight. In people listening in, hearing how you work and what does go in, and what better case study than the Fishermania that you've spoke about in this show. Like, that is brilliant for people to hear coming from you, mate. Really, really cool. I've got some quick fire questions for you that I ask all the guests. Now, you probably know what's coming in these, so I hope you've not done too much research, because it's kind of spur of the moment normally. Give me an item in your seat box that you can't live without.
Probably a clicker for clicking your fish.
Right.
Every venue I go to, obviously, different weight limits, you know what it's like.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty bad for me weight. I used to be worse when I was younger. I've got better, but I'm susceptible to going over in my keep net.
Really?
Because what I try and do is I can't help myself, but when you obviously fishing, you're trying to keep track of your nets. Say you've got a £60 net limit. I'll want to put like £45 in a net so I'm safe. I'll get to £45. I'll catch one more, and I'll go, oh no, that can go in there, and that's always the one that takes you over. So I've got this clicker, and I use that. But also, there's a bit of like a thing with me clicker as well. I've had the same clicker since the first time I ever actually went to Westwood Lakes. I bought it out the shop, and I bought a black and green one because I was sponsored by Maver at the time to match me kit.
Okay.
And I've just got it in my head that's like me lucky clicker. I feel like if I lost that clicker, it'd be. So I think that's why the clicker popped to my head first, because it's like, as well as I'm bad with weight limits and stuff, gone over a few times this year in various venues. I think it's a bit of a lucky item as well, and something that I wouldn't want to lose.
I like it. I'm definitely not going to nick your green clicker. If you could only fish one venue for the rest of your life, where would it be and why?
Western Pools. It's just like me fishing home. I love it there. I love the people. Mike, Rachel at Western, they've done a lot for me in the past, and I just love the fishing. You've been there, stunning place, loads of fish. Had some great days there. Not even just the fishing, the clubhouse, the people, everything. I love it there.
It is one of the best commercial fisheries ever.
Yeah.
Amazing place, and like you said, the people, Mike and Rachel and everyone there, phenomenal.
Love it there. Brilliant.
Get sent to
fishery.
Western Pools, gang. If you've never been to Western Pools before, go and have a visit. It is incredible.
100%.
Who's the best angler that you have ever fished with?
Easy answer this for me. I've fished with a lot of good anglers, but someone who I fish with all the time is Andy Bennett. And I very rarely I feel like I watch an angler and I think he is just 10 times better than anyone else I've ever watched. And when I watch him, that's what it's like.
Yeah.
He's smoother, he's more efficient, he knows what to do. He can have 2 rigs because he knows they're the right 2 rigs to fish with, and he'll just batter everyone. Andy Bennett, brilliant angler, great bloke, someone who's taught me most of what I do in me fishing now sort of come from Andy Bennett, sort of the inventor of, the ground bait, the way we mix the ground bait. Even the ground bait that I use itself has been designed by Andy Bennett. He's an angler that sort of, in terms of F1 fishing, have invented a lot of the way we all take for granted as standard ways of fishing for F1s, I'd say. The best angler I've fished with by a country mile at
Brilliant
F1s and carp fishing, I'd say. Andy Bennett.
You actually remind me of Bennett a little bit.
Similar, aren't they?
In the way he's just so laid
Similar,
back. Do you see what? It's not just me, is it?
He'll give me some stick for you saying that now.
Oh,
He'll
there
say
you
I'm
go.
trying to copy him and stuff.
Definitely. Definitely.
Because you know what he's like. He's a wind-up, isn't he, as well?
He really is.
We've got quite a few podcasts that's had Bennett on, actually. And it's always great on the show, isn't it?
He is funny.
He is really good. He was
well.
the first ever Fishing Gurus podcast,
Yeah,
Andy Bennett.
yeah.
We did the first ever one with him. Long time ago now, that. If there's one thing you could change about fishing, what would it be?
Probably like rules, bit like what I said about the net limit. And it's not necessarily I'd change the rules. I don't like all the rules that try and stop your fishing methods. So stuff like banning the overshotted rig. I don't always believe that's the way to go, because then people can try and bend the rules and stuff like that. I'd rather anything that doesn't harm the fish, like I say, is fine. I think it should be allowed. But more about rules, I'd rather have a standardized set of rules. I don't like that every venue you go to, there's such a different variety of rules. I'd rather have like a standard set that you go to every fishery where there's a similar set of rules, because it's just, I forget myself like what it is, and you're having to check, and you go to this venue, it might be a £50 net limit, one might be an £80 one. It's if you go over, you lose the net, you just get knocked back. There's too many different rules. I'd rather have a standard set of rules.
Definitely a common answer. That we've had that one a few
That's probably
times.
the most common answer.
Yeah,
if
I think
honest.
it
says a lot, doesn't it?
Big time. Coming from some of the best anglers, all saying the same
just
thing.
the element of confusion with it. You think to yourself, I don't know, you might be shallow fishing, you think, can I tap the water? Can I slap? And if you don't know, you haven't checked your phone during the match, make sure, because you don't want to do anything that, you know what I mean, you're trying your best to stick as close to the rules as you can with everything, and sometimes you don't always know, so you're having to check. It's just, it is something that I think you'd like obviously you're never going to get it where every fishery is going to be the same rules completely, but just a slightly more standard set of rules, I think. Like it,
and definitely a common theme there. Final question in this little set: if you had to give someone who's never been fishing before some inspiration to go and try it, what would you say to them?
Tough question, that. I've heard you ask this question before, and I've always thought to myself, I don't know how I'd answer that question.
Well, now's your chance. No pressure.
But
can make sure cameras on him, Tobe.
Yeah, it's right there, don't worry.
Probably what I would say is, to anyone who doesn't understand fishing, like I speak to, like, say my mates from school who I went to school with, and I tell them about fishing, they're like, I don't understand why you like fishing. And, you know, and probably before I ever started fishing, I probably felt this way. I'd just say, until you've gone and had a go, you'll not understand, you know, catching fish, being outside, and all, you know, all the stuff that goes around it. And you just got to go, try it, enjoy it, get outside. And I think 99% of people who go and give it a go will come back to it, because I love it. It's my life. And I think a lot more people would enjoy it if they just go and give it a try.
Fully agree. I think most people get into it by, I don't really fancy it, but my uncle John wants to take me, and then all of a sudden they're in. They're up.
I started, there was like a couple of ponds near where I live. I remember wandering down, seeing a few people fishing there, going and talking to him, just asking about it. And then just one of my mates said to me, who used to just like knock about with down by me, should we get a rod? Should we have a go? And we just went and had a go, and it's just evolved from there. Once you've caught your first fish, I think that's it. Then you're hooked, like they say, and you just love it.
Get out, go and have a try.
Just be open-minded to it. Go and give it a go.
Yeah, love it, mate. Love it. Now, we've got a bit of a new concept for this part of the show, Tobe. You're going to love this one. I don't know if you noticed. Normally, we do like a guess the guest and blur your face out and make people guess who's going to be on the podcast. But this morning, we were sat in Starbucks, and I said, I'm going to try
Starbucks without me.
Yeah, $24.99 it were for a large latte and a croissant. I'm only kidding. Other coffee chains are available, folks. Greg's is great. It's a lot cheaper. And I says, you know what? We're going to try something different. And I put a post on the Tackle Guru Facebook page of me and you sat in Starbucks. And I says, we've got current FishOMania champion Kristian Jones on the podcast today. Fire some questions at him, and I'll ask a few on the show. Nice. And I haven't looked at the response yet, but I have got my phone here. But I just thought it'd be a really nice touch to get you listeners or people watching.
Be a shame if there's no comments, wouldn't it?
It would as well.
I was just thinking.
It's a real good chance for people to sort of ask their own questions. So I'm going to pick 3. I put it on Instagram and on Facebook.
Okay.
Here we are. We've got 30 odd comments already. Let's pick all comments. God, we look a bit tired this morning, sat there, don't we?
Yeah, that was pre-coffee, wasn't it? We were a bit early.
This were about 6 a.m. Let's have a look. Give me a few seconds. This looks like a good one. This is from Jez Foley.
Yep.
He's put, assuming most anglers you coach are match anglers looking to improve/refine their understanding, what are the most common faults or neglected aspects of their fishing that you come across? Maybe something that the better anglers take for granted and those trying to get to a higher standard overlook.
Yeah,
that's
a brilliant question.
Jez, if you want to come and sit here and ask a few questions,
mate. There's a job going.
And it's something that I actually talk about quite a lot. And like when I get home and I like maybe speak to my dad and he's talked to me, how's your coaching been and stuff. And that's what he normally asks me, like, what could you teach him? Like, what did they not know? And then I talk about it. And probably the most common thing that pops up is actually feeding with a catapult while you're holding your pole.
Honestly,
it's probably the thing that most people struggle with. Like,
wow.
I think because, and you're the same, we started from quite young fishing, got taught it by people, fish with a catapult, and by the time you're fishing matches, it's natural to you and you can do it. I think for anglers that come in a little bit later, I think that feeding with a catapult is quite difficult to get used to, and I think a lot of the time it's to do with the way they set the seat box up, getting nice and level, the technique of holding the pole and feeding. But what I find, and other things that I teach them, it's the same, but in terms of feeding with a catapult, they actually shy away from it in matches because they feel like it might spread out,
Mm.
they say, I'm just going to feed with a pot, put it down, instead of practicing. And I think that's probably the common mistake I find with anglers that I coach. Instead of practicing what they struggle with, they tend to shy away from it and do. And I think one of the biggest things I'd give as advice to people, if you're struggling with an aspect of fishing, just go out, do it, and you'll just get better by practicing it. Don't shy away from it.
Phenomenal advice, mate. Phenomenal advice. Someone's put here. Paul Brandrick's put a picture of a goat. Someone else has put, who's his favourite Power Ranger?
As I say, I don't know much about Power Rangers, but I'm going to go for the red one for like Liverpool Football Club.
Right. Okay. I'll let you have that one.
Great result of the weekend, wasn't it?
I don't want to talk about us at the minute, to be
I'm
fair.
a massive Arsenal fan as well. I just wanted to put that in there.
Let's have a look.
We are so bad at the minute. I reckon us three could beat Liverpool at the minute.
I want to put it out there that I did think it was a weak penalty for the last one. Just
it
was weak.
It's been the same story all season for us.
Yeah, it has. It has. You you need some changes there now, don't you?
I'm gonna go in with a fishing one this time, as in a little bit more techie fishing. It's from Dave Brown, and he's put, when shallow fishing in summer, how long would you prime a swim before going on it? And have you ever gone in on it from the start of a match?
Yeah, well, it's quite an interesting one, this. My thoughts on this have been changed a little bit this year. Arthur Hilmy, who we were talking about when we were talking about Fisho, and his mate John Alexander, they've had a really, really good year's fishing this year. They've won loads of matches, qualified for big finals. And the way they fish, they are happy to go in straight away on the shallow fishing and not build it up. Like everything I've ever learnt about shallow fishing is loose feed some bait, get some fish there, get them confident, eating the bait without catching them, so that when you go in, they're nice and confident, they're easier to catch. But what I found is that with days when the fish want to be shallow, and that is the way to fish, by wasting your first 40 minutes potentially not fishing shallow, you can be behind the anglers that start on it. I think there's a time and a place for both. I'd always say, if I was unsure, I'd feed it for at least half an hour before I'd go in. But if you go to a very prolific venue for F1s, Benny's Lake at Lindome, the Clay Pit at Weston, there's potential that you could go in shallow from the off and catch straight away. And when I go to Benny's Lake at Lindome, that is probably one of the venues where I will be happy to go in and go in and fish straight away.
Right.
Just depends how prolific the venue is and how well you know the fishery. I'd always say, if you don't know, give them half an hour of feeding, prime it up, and then you've got the best chance of catching them when you go in.
Right.
But
Brilliant
my
answer,
thoughts
mate.
have definitely changed on that, because I would never have ever started shallow until I've seen it this last year or so.
We like John Alexander,
Alexander,
Hilmy.
Arter. They can go in and catch within 5 minutes, and it surprised me. And it's probably because you get stuck in your ways as anglers, I think, sometimes. Like, you fish your same way. You go to your peg, I'm going to feed for half an hour before I try it. Sometimes the fish clock onto that and, go in a bit earlier and you might catch him.
Got to do a final one off Instagram. Alex Rimmer's commented, he's put, Chris is the reason I gave up fishing. I always drew next to him at Partridge. It's not a question, it's just a comment. Big Pabs 007 has put, will he be paying for the Nando's? Yes, Big Pabs, he will
Absolutely,
be.
he
Yeah,
will.
they've already told me this.
This is a good one. Adam Parry on Instagram has put, if you could fish one match again, which match would it be and what would you do different?
Yeah, pretty much the same as something I've already spoke about earlier on. May have matched this final this year. What I'd have done different is I'd have paid more attention to my silverfish line, took some casters, loose fed, been positive, and like I say, you never know. Maybe would have been enough on the day.
Right.
That's the main match where I've really regretted a decision that I made, or that one this year. And I think maybe because it was only a couple, like last month, it's very fresh in my mind. and it's still like playing on my mind a little bit.
It's a big one, mate. It's a big match. Did you bring us a gift in?
I did. You said you wanted something to do with Fishermania.
Yeah.
And I was umming and ahhing about bringing some clothing, my top or my wet gear, but I know the lads who have been in and won Fishermania before have done that. So I thought, bring something a little bit different.
Let's have a look what we got.
So I bought...
Look at that.
The board. Quite a big one. So you won't miss this one. It's the board off... I don't know where you want to put it, Matt.
I've got an idea. I'm taking my headphones off, Tobe. Get that camera set on the wide.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
That's where it is, mate.
It's the board from me peg on, obviously, the day of the Fishermania.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll have to pan the camera down. Hang on.
So
We're really changing how we do things here, aren't
I was thinking what I could bring. I obviously, the trophy, the check, I didn't want to part ways with. So I thought that something good.
Can you see it
Yeah,
on
that looks
camera?
brilliant, that.
Look at that, folks.
Yeah.
Did you bring any screws? And I'll get it screwed into front
Yeah,
of the
we'll
table.
get that sorted later. Yeah.
Shall we?
I can stay there then.
That's a cracking gift. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
mate.
no problem.
Thank you for a great show. One thing I am going to say, folks, again, just changing stuff up a little bit here. We've actually been out on the bank with Chris and recorded just a little 8-10 minute film of him in fishing mode. Obviously, myself, Toby, we get to sit in front of anglers like Kristian, and you lot get to listen to these anglers. And a nice little touch we thought we'd add is when we have a guest on, take them out on the bank. I'll do a little bit of research on them while I'm there, but you'll also just get a little insight into how they fish. Obviously, hearing it and talking about it on here is different to seeing it with your own eyes. So check it out. Click the link just here and you can see this absolute bagging machine in action.